briefly how we go about identifying the trend. Point number one, we have to use the right interval. We don't use tick bars. We don't use minute bars. Come and take a demo with us and we'll go into the details on this. Let's look at the indicators themselves, because once we have the right interval, we have 4 different indicators that we use to help us to identify that trend. In subgraph 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, the most important thing that we look at is the slope of the indicator. The slope gives us the trend. In subgraph 2, in particular, this slope helps us to identify that trend. But what happens when it reaches its maximum at 100 or its minimum at 0? If we hit 100 on this indicator, we are long. If we hit 0, we are short. And we remain short until the slope of the indicator changes, or unless there's some other compelling reason to adjust the trend based on the other 3 indicators. In the secondary indicator in subgraph 3, this is used particularly to identify a divergence. On both the top and the bottom of the bars, we have a specialized indicator that identifies where there is a divergence. And when the divergence takes place, we're getting ready to take advantage of that because we anticipate a change in market direction. The divergence is calculated based upon the price action of the SPOOs and the corresponding value of the indicator in subgraph 3. So as you can see, we have a lower high here and a lower high here and even a much lower high here. When that occurs, a trend line will appear on the top of the bars, showing us that we have a divergence and a likely change in direction. And over here, that bar is plotted in blue for a low divergence, where we have a higher low on the indicator here, but a lower low on the SPOOs here, indicating a time for a possible change in direction. The indicator in subgraph 4 is giving us information about the volume activity. We have positive volume plotted in green, negative selling action taking place here when we turn yellow. That further helps us to identify these changes in direction. And then finally, our last indicator in subgraph 5 is being used to plot what we really refer to as a modified RSI. And the slope here is also important, but not as important as the slope in the previous 2. Especially do we use this to further identify divergence. As the indicator is dropping off here, we're seeing an indication that we're liable to be seeing a change in the market direction, so we want to get prepared for that. All 4 are used for the purpose of identifying the trend. Once we identify the trend, then we're going to look for the contrarian that helps us to identify the setup wherein we're going to pull the trigger. So point number 1, identify the trend. Point number 2, identify the contrarian. When the setup occurs, our final step is to go to the premium and the ticky to look at the precise timing of our trade. Very logical, very methodical. So to put it in more simple terms, if we have a positive trend, if we're buying, we're looking for an oversold condition. If we're selling, the trend is down, we're looking for an overbought condition. In our next video, you'll see how we do that. This is Rod Kusin and the Spoon Man for Risk.